And we have Bob Ashcraft, who always visits us when he's here in Miami, Sherry's dad. Oh my goodness. And then we have our little one coming in. So it's a blessed day. So let's start with our reading for today from the book, The Way, the Truth, and the Life. Chapter 81, Human Authority. For the Lord's sake, submit yourselves to every human authority. As they approach Christ's lesson, certain impulsive temperaments see the gospel as a set of principles that are destructive to the current world order. Others see the Master as an avid anarchist, inflamed with sublime anger. However, Jesus would never support disorder. The novelty overflowing from the gospel does not advise the humble to take up arms against their brothers and sisters, but to become even more humble by taking up their cross as the Savior did. It is obvious that the good news does not teach bowing down before insolent tyranny. Nevertheless, it does ask for respect for human authority out of one's love for the divine Master. If persons of authority demand more than they should, if they become despots, then at the right time the Lord will correct them amid the circumstances that express His will. This certainty is one more reason for the peace of mind of the Christian servant who under no circumstances should break the rhythm of harmony. Therefore, do not be indifferent towards the authority at your place of work. It is possible that quite often it will meet you with your approval. Will not meet you with your quite often it will not meet with your approval. Even so, remember that Jesus is the supreme authority on earth, and He would not have put you where your efforts were not needed. You have a sacred duty to fulfill right where you happen to be today. If you are rebellious, your efforts will be for naught. Remember this truth and submit yourself to human authorities out of love for the divine Lord. Emmanuel. Alright, so that's a pretty straightforward message. And not too long ago we were doing a lecture here, a post-election lecture, where we address some of these issues. So we live in a world, place where not always we're dealing with an authority and systems that are fair. However, the way to stand up to those systems is not to rebel against them or to create disharmony, but on the contrary, to be the examples, the living examples of what we would like to see. So we don't teach by creating disharmony, we teach by exemplifying harmony. So we need to, these are opportunities where we're invited to give a testimony of the things that we have embraced in our lives, the values that we have embraced in our lives. So in this way, we are doing what the gospel asks us to do, which is called active resignation. We accept, we don't create this harmony, but we do our part. If you put in a place where this harmony exists, you'll be invited to be an element of peace and an element of harmony. Okay? Alright, so with that, we are going to do our initial prayer. And I'm going to ask Ricardo to turn off the light for me, please. Right behind you? Yep. Thank you. Dear Father, thank you so much for the blessings of this day. We gather today in your name, asking once more for your guidance, for your presence, and for your love. Please bless all of us here today, incarnate, discarnate, any person who might be joining us live on the internet, all of us, so that we can all be open with our minds and hearts to receive the lessons of today. In particular, we ask you to surround our friend Andrea with love and inspire her as she delivers the teachings of the day. Once again, we are extremely thankful and grateful for this day and for this opportunity. And so be it. All right, so we're going to have Andrea today.
Good morning to those. I haven't said good morning yet. Hi. Good to see those faces again. I said, is that Jonathan outside? Bear with me for 1 second. If anyone is watching us at home, a warm welcome as well. Yesterday at night, Sandra Averhoff sent me a message. She said, what is your topic? And I'm like, I'm not sure how to name it. She's like, well, what's the overall idea? I said, it's about courage. It's about courage. We had decided to visit this topic today to address the aspect of courage in different situations in our lives. And to offer us a moment of reflection, I decided that often we put a video at the end to cause an impact, and so that everybody becomes emotional. I decided to do the opposite. I wanted to open with a video today to allow for the mood to set in to address some of the things that we're going to talk about. Is courage a spiritist topic? Yes, it is. The Gospel according to Spiritism addresses the moral courage and other ideas of how we are able to set aside certain fears so that we can live. Let us watch this video. Okay.
We all can see and are aware of your condition and how well you deal with it.
Let me get the light.
Is that inner thing that keeps you going?
How do you overcome your fear? How do you say, I'm not going to be afraid? Where do you find the courage?
I can get through, and I think I'm a person who represents A, you never give up, you find a way. If something really is important to your heart, you look and see what's inside yourself, and you find a way.
I don't want this to be the end. So whether it's, running the marathon or walking the marathon or crawling the marathon and being the last one across, I'm okay with that. I didn't say I'd win it, but I am defiant, and I want to come out stronger.
Just continue to push. And so every time things come on, I always say to myself, push past the pain. It's going to be okay. So I know today that no matter what, I can push past the pain.
But I really look at my life as blessed. Sure, I've had challenges and terrible things happen and loss of dear people and all that. But I really think that if we had less fear and resistance, like a stratified thing to death, life would be happier.
That look, if you are unsatisfied with whatever conditions, circumstances are in your life, then you have the choice to be able to go and create the life that you want. To be able to go and make the decision to go and do it. And things aren't going to be perfect when you start, but just to go and choose that, say that, hey, like I'm capable of living more.
Sometimes I say, why me? Why have I had such a hard life? 5 of my siblings died. Why does it not go away? And then I think again, why not me? Better me than a kid who already has stress on his life. Or better me than a baby who wouldn't understand it and who has a better chance of hurting more. So I think, why me? And then I think, why not me?
Six ordinary people finding strength and courage in difficult challenges, different challenges that they're faced with, revolving from anywhere regarding the fear of death to a little boy who's facing a terminal ill and is able to ask, why not me, as opposed to why me. That is such a defiant state of mind. And we found other people talking about finding strength, the need to find strength within, and not making excuses is another one. So it's a pretty powerful message. I've watched this video over and over again, and every time it definitely blows me away. Joana de Angelis, in the book Life, Challenges and Solution, has a very powerful short sentence. This is what she says. Have the courage to live. It seems so simple, right? What do you mean, have the courage to live? She addresses challenges the difficult moments that all of us face at one point or another in our lives. And she calls up to our attention that we need to have the courage to be able to live our lives, to address certain situations that is ours alone, and for no one else to go through. And of course, we can count on the assistance of friends and family, people who love us at the Spirit Center, but sometimes the battle truly is our own. There is nothing that anyone can do. It's all up to us. And so in talking about all of this and considering what Joanna de Angelis brings us, we have to start reflecting on today's study and start questioning, in our lives, what are some of the fears that we have? Do we have fears? What is it that holds us back? If we want to make a change in our lives, sometimes we say, I don't have the strength to do. I don't have the capability of doing. And behind every comment like that is a mask of the lack of courage to go forward. And so we decided to resort to one of the most courageous person that we talk about, and talking about persistence, strength, and courage that was shown in our video, and resort to Paul of Tarsus this morning. I personally love Paul of Tarsus because of the example of courage that he had. Not only during the time in which he defended the Mosaic Law, and he was very courageous in the way that he did, and although we are not in agreement with a lot of the things that he did, one of the things that he's fully aware of is that they were learning experiences. As a matter of fact, it goes with a phrase that he has, the letters written to the Philippians, in which he stated this right here: brothers and sisters, I do not consider myself yet to have taken hold of it, but one thing I do, forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead, I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Jesus Christ. One of the things that he is addressing here is reflecting on past mistakes. When we talk about courage and spiritism and having the courage to take a look deep within ourselves and see what needs to be modified, addressing the questions that still hold us back, whether it's a fear, whether it's a fear of making the same mistakes, whether these mistakes holds our step back and doesn't allow us to go forward, we need to start addressing this, because one of the things that he shows us, and I bet psychologists themselves love this, because if he had stayed stuck on the mistakes that he had made, he would have become emotionally paralyzed, unable to move forward. Am I right, Sherry? I am right. I love the psychologist right there. I know she's really supportive of that idea, because remorse and guilt are the two factors that will actually allow people to not have the courage to try again, to start again, to go forward, often in relationships in their lives. So we begin with Paul of Tarsus today because one of the things that he did is he pressed forward with courage. And let us consider this. One of the things that encouraged and empowered him also was the kind of trust that he had on Christ. Because by this time he had already received the invitation, the call. And the answer to that call was, Lord, what will you have me do? Now, if Paul had been stuck on the mistakes that he had made, he wouldn't have asked that question, and he wouldn't have pressed on forward. And it shows also the kind of humility in the presence that he has here, because all of us here have, in our past mistakes, in every decision that we make, whether out of fear or not, we see that everything that we do is a learning experience. And if we don't see that yet, we should. We should do just that. See the mistakes that we make. See the kind of steps that we have the courage to make as learning experiences, even if we apparently fail. Because that's another kind of illusion that we have. We failed. There is nothing that can be done. We are a failure. We are losers. And that's not true, because we are immortal spirits. I wanted to bring this topic today because it's a current type of moment in our world where we see a lot of things and it causes fear. We have a guest staying at our home that talks about how many spiritist speakers or speakers of other philosophies are instilling such fear on people, saying that our world is in chaos because it's a moment of transition and there's a lot of evil happening in our world. And he says, the world is getting better. There are beautiful things out there, but it's easier to instill fear than to talk about this and empower the immortal beings that we all are to seek for answers and take a step forward and see the challenges that we are often presented with in life as an opportunity for growth, as a step that we take onward, upwards. So Paul is really inspiring for us to use him in the topic today. That kind of trust that he put on Christ allowed him to say this: I can do all this through him who gives me strength. And so when we talk about courage, let's stop to think about this for a second. You don't have to answer this right now. Sometimes the lack of courage has to do with some kind of influence someone has in our lives. Be it putting us down, belittling us, not encouraging us. Sometimes it's the presence. So see how important it is, the presence of parents, to encourage their child to feel that they can conquer the world. It's not building on an ego. It's building on the strength of the Spirit, empowering, encouraging, which in reality is what we have when we talk about this. Is it because we have forgotten about our divine essence? A lot of the actions, things that happen in our life do bring us down. We were talking about this at breakfast yesterday. I remember how I was talking to a friend and she was explaining to me how life had lost meaning. Everything she did was wrong. She attracted the wrong people to her life. She was afraid of falling in love. She was afraid of doing this. She was afraid of changing her job. And so we had to ask, what is it that makes you so afraid? I'm afraid of the pain things may cause. Of course, it's painful. Who wants to go through pain? But then we have empowering people like that, where when life gives us the test, the only option that we have is either face it or succumb to it. And when we succumb to it, we stagnate. It's the emotional paralysis that we talk about, that some people allow themselves to get into because of past mistakes or hardships that they endured, as opposed to seeing things as an opportunity in life. So the question is, how do we see ourselves? How do we see ourselves? I remember when I was a young girl, I've mentioned this before, I had a nightgown that my father gave me. It was gray and it had a Taurus in it. And it was about my zodiac sign. I'm a Taurus. And there were 3 qualities that were written on there, or not quality, but rather traits of the Taurus sign. The first one was proud. The second one was hard-headed. And the third one was courageous. And immature, unknowing, I used to love the fact that I was all 3. Hard-headed, proud, and courageous. Right? And so I used to put that nightgown, and of course, we as children, we imagine things and we fantasize about things. But as I grew up, I started understanding that I had more of the first 2 than the last one. Hard-headed is a big one, and proud sometimes can be a big one as well. But when life started happening around me, calling about to be courageous, I noticed that it wasn't so easy to be courageous, to face certain challenges. We fear things, and it's normal because courage is not the absence of fear. We can have fear and still face something courageously with the belief that we are able to go through it. Our hearts may be 1,000 beats per hour. We may be before someone who is terminally ill and we are afraid that that person is going to die, yet we encourage that person. We find the courage within to encourage that person. As I did with my own father. We see friends that need our guidance, and so our own living example serves for them also to have courage and have faith that everything is as it should be. Spiritists, Christians, true Christians, have a powerful message to give. We are approaching the Christmas season. It's as if Christ is closer than ever, although there's a lot of the consumism already, but we look at the Christmas trees and we look at the ornaments, we start making plans to be with our family, and it's as if more and more we draw the Christ near us. And as Christians, we have a deep responsibility to show what Paul did. Paul, although all of us admire tremendously, there were like decades of hardship, of obstacles, of challenges, of humiliation, of beating. The kind of things that he endured, yet one of the things that he did was always encourage those who were following his steps closely. And that's one of the things that we have the responsibility to do, to erase this idea that we should be fearful of the moments that are happening around us, that we don't have the strength to overcome the mountains and the obstacles that we are encountering along the way, which are in reality tools for our betterment and for our spiritual growth. But in order for us to be this living example, like Paul was, we need to start believing in the things that we are studying. I can do all this through him who gives me strength. How often have we needed a moment like that to be able to wake up in the morning and carry on? How often did we need something like this to find the courage to start a project again, to accept a new job, to begin a new relationship? We were talking about how relationships today are so easily disposable. There is a single man who's staying with us, and he was talking about how relationships nowadays are just to kind of have fun. I said, I think you're afraid of love. He stopped. He's like, what are you talking about? I said, you're afraid of love. Because he had shared with us some of the things when you meet someone and all of a sudden they start showing who they are, and you don't have time to deal with them. I mean, they're nagging. They're this, they're that. But have the courage to open yourself up and be vulnerable as well and love the person and allow the person to love you back. Have the courage to open yourself up and say, this is who I am, and carry through with their life. So, going back to the little girl with the gown that believed it was a good thing to be proud and hard-headed and courageous, today I find that had it not been for the Spiritist teachings, for the things that my soul believes in, knows it to be truth, I don't think that I could have endured some of the obstacles and the challenges courageously that I had in the last 10 years of growth. And so we invite everyone to study about this and see what is it about the gospel that gives us the strength and courage to overcome obstacles, to be defiant, like in the video, before certain difficult and fearful situations present themselves. How do we find the need, or better yet, the ability to trust in God so deeply that we are able to occupy ourselves and allow Him to play a role in giving us the strength? Joanna de Angelis will tell us that courage is in reality a virtue. Much like all virtues, we begin acquiring them, making it a nature of our souls through habits, until it becomes our own nature. It becomes part of us. Paul was courageous, as we mentioned, different types of courage in our lives. We can also see many types of different courages. But Paul also was instilled at time with fear. In the Acts of the Apostle, in Corinth, the Lord spoke to the apostle in saying, be not afraid. And the force of the Greek expression is stop being afraid. Paul's courage had to do with the fact that even though there were moments of fear, the courage is what gave him strength to continue doing what was right. What was right. That's what courage is. And we can apply that in many different ways in our lives. We go forward, we find Joanna de Angelis saying that courage is a moral quality for facing the struggle and persevering in it, never giving up on it for any reason. Let's read that again. Courage is a moral quality for facing the struggle and persevering in it, not being resistant to it, That's what the lady in the beginning of the video said. Never giving up on any of the struggles for any reason whatsoever. And then Paul brings us closer to him when he talks about persevering in the struggles that he had right here. I do not understand what I do. For what I do, I do not do, but what I hate, I do. For what I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. He's talking about the frailties, the things that still held him back. Let's talk about this for a second. How many of us said, I can't believe I'm still doing these things that I don't like within myself? That I'm still arrogant sometimes, that I'm filled with ego, that I love to, that I have this jealous about me, envy, and we hate that about ourselves because a lot of those moral vices, they hurt our souls. And we don't like to have them, do we? It's like pink prickles telling us what needs to be modified. So Paul brings us closer to him when he says that, but he perseveres in the struggles that he faces. And it's important to go to him and see this because we also have our own frailties and we also struggle with them as well. And while he's showing us that he was not perfect, that he struggled, oftentimes when we begin the hard work of taking a look within ourselves, having the courage to see what needs to be modified. There was a great friend of mine when I was in my 20s. She said, Andrea, this is a test you should do. You want to know if you can look yourself in the eye? Have you ever thought about that? You go to the mirror and you look at yourself. And you look in your eyes. And see what is it about you that you don't like yet. Please have a psychologist's number net ready by you when you do that. Because it's not easy to take a look within and see what needs to be modified. The things that no one else knows about but us. Our inner demons, if you will. The tiny little Andreas that are there that needs to be battled out. Making it the great Andrea. Paul's courage had to do with battling the old man. For the new man to come about. And that's our task as well. The responsibility. And it takes a lot of courage to be able to do that work. That is why a lot of people, when they start doing the work of looking through Spiritism, since we are here, and start doing the fraternal counseling, and participating in the study of the gospel, and understanding the answers of the Spirit's book, and seeing the things that is non-transferable, that no one can do for us. And although we love Susanna's intelligence, but she cannot solve the things that are still knotted inside of me, a lot of us, on the first moment that we make a mistake, we become discouraged and we stop. We start ignoring things. And the really great thing about Joanna de Angelis is she says that when we have the courage to look at ourselves, we have to understand that mistakes that come about from the struggles that we still have, in reality, we cannot run away from them, disassociate ourselves from the past. Rather, we take a look and we start making plans that are doable so that we don't fall prey into feeling discouraged when the first mistake happens. When we have the first moment of fear and don't do the things that we were supposed to do. So finding things that are reachable to do, that are reasonable within our spiritual progress so that we can continue. She will state us that because the mistakes lie in our spiritual past and we can't reach it anymore, meaning it's already done, and yet we cannot disassociate ourselves from it, one of the things that we can do is set new behaviors. We can establish for ourselves, by the means of spiritist knowledge or psychological assistance, the means of putting in place a change of pace in the occurrences of our lives. Making a planning. People that deal with businesses, they do this all the time. Project planning. Business goals. What do you want to do for 2017? What kind of changes do we want to make? We know people right now, in the last month of the year, that are finishing they're closing their businesses. They aren't sure what it's going to be next year. There's a lot of financial hardship for a lot of people. They don't know how it's going to be. So what do? They start with small steps so that we don't become overwhelmed with the worries and the fears that assails us. and take it one day at a time. That's why she says we can change the pace and pay attention to the occurrences of our own lives, meaning we are in control. We are in control. And we have all the assistance that we need in order to be able to do that. We find Emmanuel explaining Paul as an accomplisher who strive daily to reach the light, daily. Walking in the darkness of the world to meet the Master who made himself heard at the crossroads of his life. In reality, we are also responsible for becoming accomplishers of our own lives. One of the things that I really wanted to stress here is that we need to validate people's feelings and our own. And let me explain this. Paul was filled with hardships and difficulties as he strived daily to reach the light, and so are we. The way that I face my fears, the way that I handle certain situations and feelings and emotions is going to differ greatly from John's. John has walked his own path. John has had his own experiences, not only in this life, but many different existences before him, in this one. So sometimes we will say, I can't believe she's so fearful of that. Just do it. I can't believe the person is struggling so much and suffering so much. Get a life. Be happy. We cannot do that. We cannot do that. In the same token that we feel things differently, that we fear certain things, others are entitled to do the same. But one of the things that the gospel brings us closer to understanding is the need to strive daily to be able to overcome these obstacles as we ourselves reach the light that Emmanuel is talking about here. So Emmanuel says, the Master called upon Paul from the higher spheres of life. And we dare add, the Master calls upon us as well. He goes on to state that Paul fumbled in the darkness of human existence before he heard the calling. And then he answered, Lord, what will you have me do? How would we answer? Because we're called upon daily to our responsibilities. I know 2 superwomen in this Spirit Center. I know many other supermen and superwomen who have their children, their professional work, the work at the Spirit Center. And I don't have that. And I get tired, and sometimes I see, how the heck do they do it? They maintain a serenity. They face obstacles. They face difficulties. Yet they stay true. Because they are answering to the call daily. Every morning is an answer to the call. Emmanuel reminds us that when he says, Lord, what will you have me do? He deposits his entire faith and trust in Jesus. Because it's an open question. Not fearing what the answer would be. We sometimes fear asking the same questions because perhaps we are not ready yet to grow up spiritually in answer to that call. Would we have had the courage to say that? Lord, what will you have me do? It's something that we start to think about here as well. So he sets aside any fear, and Emmanuel states that between him and Jesus, although there was a personal call, there was an abyss separating them. And the only reason that Paul got closer and closer, ascending from the abyss, is because it was through decades of struggles and work towards the good that he was able to diminish that distance between him and Christ himself. And so Emmanuel tells us that we are able to do the very same. Comparably, is anybody here getting stoned or beaten or humiliated in society like Paul was? We're not going to compare because it's a great one. But if we look at our own lives and we count the many blessings that we have, we were at this beautiful place yesterday in Key West, all the beautiful houses, and I was joking with Marcelo. I said, you don't need to buy me that for Christmas. And he said, we are so rich. And in a moment at looking at the ocean, we realized that we were. Even if we don't consider, talking about material things, we're talking about maybe having someone who can hold our hands And we're not talking about marriage, because a lot of people are single, but they have friends, or they have something that empowers them. We can talk about how here, the own Spiritus Center, we have all of us here that we can call our family. That I'm certain that if I needed something, and I called Daniel in the back, I'm sure he would take off his shirt and give it to me. This is what we're talking about, the richness and the things, the blessings that we have around us. Because one of the things that the Spirit's teachings tell us is that each one of you, each one of us, are in reality tools for the construction of the betterment of the world in God's hands. So we put ourselves into service. We face our fears. We do what is right, even when other people are not in agreement. Because not everybody is going to see eye to eye like they did with Paul. The other thing is that Paul's gaze rested in the future. He didn't look back. When we talk in Spiritism about the aspect of the future reward, that a lot of people think that we're going to get a paycheck when we die at the end of our lives, we're talking about all of the virtues and all of every accomplishment that we have had thus far, spiritually speaking, that is ours to take with us. We can take our cars, our clothes, our money, our homes, but we can take all that we are. And while we might reincarnate with a baggage full of things to work on, we are able to replace it with the treasures of the soul that often come if we can compare our struggles as a piece of coal. And we have the tools to be able to lapidate it and find it, we will take with us many diamonds. And the ability that we have to overcome obstacles and work through them with the courage that we find in the benevolent spirits, transforming ourselves, finding out that fear is exactly what is going to allow us not to be able to work on the feelings often of guilt, of remorse, of focusing on the negative, and not believing that if we just take one step forward, one moment, everything can change around us for the better. For the better. This is why Spiritism talks about courage. The first thing that we have as a reminder is that Spiritism will bring us the knowledge of the things that will enable us to know where we have come from, where we are going, and why we are here on the earth. And that we are called upon to try and see things from a higher point of view. The perspective of happiness and future reward that awaits us should give us the patience, resignation, and courage needed to follow our pathway to the end. So if we have the ability to try to see that the things that we go through here are temporary. We've been enrolled in a school where we are going to be tested, where there will be trials, where we are going to be called upon to act. Susanna has had a class with her students where she would engage them in the actual work of what they were training to do, right? So it wasn't just theory, it was practice. We know the theory, we already know. But we have to have the courage to put it into practice. That's what we need to do. And so Spiritism comes to encourage us to make conscious, responsible analysis of ourselves, what needs to be changed. We already know where we come from. The question of where we are going really is going to depend on how we live our lives, and we already know that as well, so that's empowering. And we know why we are here. And so when we see this with a certainty, one of the things that we're going to do, if we, God forbid, have an illness within ourselves or a family, we are going to have the courage to try to find a healing for that. And if death should visit us, as in the case of the lady in the video, we won't fear death because we have the answers for all of this. We will have the courage to face it and assist those that are beside us to face it as well. As we continue in our study, we're going to see that the Gospel according to Spiritism reminds us that more courage is going to be needed to overcome ourselves and other people. So the battle is our alone, and it's an inner work. It has nothing to do with anybody outside. and to battle the vices of selfishness, which is what Lazarus calls the monsters that devours our minds. Joana de Angelis will state that fear, when taking a look of self-betterment, is what creates the strong resistance to be able to fight that which all of us are able to do. Should we believe in ourselves? Should we only believe in ourselves? And when you're talking about moral courage, or the courage aspect of Spiritism, one of the other things that they talk to us about here is the responsibility, also called duty. So duty is the individual's moral obligation, first towards him or herself, and towards others immediately thereafter. But they continue on explaining that duty is a practical summary of the moral speculation. It is the courage of the soul that confronts the distresses of life's struggles. So all of us have reincarnated, and all of us have different duties and responsibilities that we must address. I can't ask Sherry to do them for me. It's my responsibility and my duty. She can help me and offer moral support. She can give me assistance as a friend. She can give me some kind of recommendation. But she can't do it for me. It's mine alone. It is both strict and yielding, ready to adapt itself to the diverse complications. It remains unbending before temptation. Humans should love duty not because it preserves them against life's struggles. Humankind cannot avoid those. But because it provides the soul with the strength it needs for its development. And so, as an example of moral courage and moral duty, we have Malala right here. I'm not sure how many of us would have the courage to continue doing what she did after a bullet struck our head, because that's what happened to her when she was just 16. From simply speaking out about the need for education for girls. They thought the bullets would silence us, but they failed. And then out of that silence came thousands of voices. It's interesting that she says us, as in representing those that can't speak for themselves. Of course, we know that she probably reincarnated with that specific mission, but so have we. We have reincarnated with specific duties and responsibilities that we ourselves asked for. It's the moral courage that we talk about here. And this is why we need to feel even more encouraged. When we reincarnated, did we reincarnate with the certainty of the kind of support that we would receive from our Father above? It's called divine providence. But the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Fear you not, therefore, you are of more value than many sparrows. Whoever therefore shall confess me before men, him I will confess also before my Father which is in heaven. So the kind of care and assistance, support that we have while incarnated is of no joke. While many focus on the negative influence of spirits, I would rather remember that we have with us an invaluable source of goodness all around us. Starting with our mentor or guardian angel, if we call it that way, we find the presence of spirits at all times, and we engage in the goodness, and we have the courage to go through life's trials, the different situations and difficulties that we face. Should we only get in tune with them? All of a sudden, it's as if we become so empowered that we could conquer the entire world. And so we are called upon to be as perfect as our Heavenly Father is, because Joana de Angelis, in a message entitled Jesus in Courage, brings us a message that is very valuable for us on the day-to-day. On the book, Jesus in Our Days, she states, the message Jesus brought with the aim of freeing human minds for the truth made him the champion of courage. Hold tight. Nobody here has to feel like Jesus, because we are many millennia away. But, she says, even though Samaritans were detested and disregarded, he chose one as an example of solidarity, rather than a presumptuous priest or a shrewd Levite, both enjoying some measure of prestige within the Rilan community. He lent his support to a woman who had made herself an object of pleasure, who was accused in public of having induced men to transgressions and crime. And he chose a disgraced woman to be a messenger of the good news of his resurrection. He made himself the voice of the humble and neglected, of those without rights or support, so that their justifiable complaints would be heard. He was never afraid about losing his life, because that's why he had come. He did not negotiate favors or submit to human conventions. He was humble, but never subservient. Let your yes, yes be yes, and your no be no. How often sometimes, when we know that we have to take a stance in saying no, we go back because we're more concerned about pleasing others around and staying true to what we know to be ethically correct. Always a Stoic, he spoke and behaved appropriately for each occasion, each person, and each circumstance without straying from his itinerary. And that is a valid work for us as well. We could all pretend that we are in high school again and there's peer pressure that we face, but we're no longer there. We are conscious beings. At Conscious Living Spiritism, we're conscious beings, fully conscious of what is expected of us. No one else can say that we don't know. We can say that we didn't know any better. As a matter of fact, if we discarnate today, we can't use that excuse anymore because we know better. He lived and acted firmly without subterfuge. He behaved in one only manner, faithfulness to God. So if we have a difficulty, if we have fears, if we don't know how to act, Joanna de Angeli tells us to lean on him. In the times of trouble, or otherwise, seek him. In harrowing doubt or persecution, consider how he would have handled the situation and do as your upright conscience inspires you. Serenely ponder Jesus' courage and follow his example, and have the courage to live. This is our study today, and it should hopefully offer for moments of reflection to see what it is that we fear, that is taking a moment to allow us to truly live with the things that we have been given, the tools, the blessings, the difficulties, the hardships. Find out what it is that causes fears. And remember that courage is not the absence of it, but it's rather doing what is right, persevering with the daily struggles that we have, and seeking in Christ the much needed strength and comfort so that we can go forward serenely, answering to the conscience that inspires us to do what is correct, what is needed, even if we are afraid, and have the courage to live. I'll open for comments and questions. Thank you. John.
Thank you for your presentation. It's interesting, we all have problems, we all have fears, and we have things to face. The only thing I would add is to have a little patience with yourself. And if you need help, ask for it, whether it be from God, whether it be from angels. Don't be afraid to ask, but have patience with the answer. Sometimes it takes a little time.
Definitely. Thank you, John.
No one else?
Crickets. Thank you so much. Okay.
All right, so we're going to go to the second part of our meeting, and today we're going to do a little differently. We have been bringing the kids in, but I have been asked to send out people over there because it disturbs the class a little bit. So first thing I'm going to do is ask you to go over there and give them a heads up that we're done so they can start closing, okay? And if you're coming for the first time, we have the passage now. We're going to turn off the light and do a prayer. Then I'm going to ask the pass givers to take a position, and they're going to take a row. It's just a moment where we give energy from ourselves, from the spirits. If you don't feel comfortable, you can just say no thank you. It's not mandatory that everybody receives it. So let's just wait for Andrea for a minute. Today we don't have a lot of people as expected on a Thanksgiving weekend. Many folks are out, but it's always good to remember that this is a time where we kind of turn off our cognitive minds and try to surrender, open ourselves to the presence of the good spirits and do our prayers, and just try to, while we're waiting for our turn or after we receive our passes, to remain in this state of connection, of meditation, because the spirits do work very close to us, in our energy, in our chakras, not only during the passes, but even before and after, as long as we keep our minds connected, because the connection is what opens the window, so to speak, so that the blessings can penetrate us more deeply. Can you close the door? Okay, so before I do the prayer, I'm going to ask the ones who will give the passes to please take a position, so I can see we don't have like a lot of people today. When we're done here, whoever finishes first, I will send. Carlos, would you help us? Okay, so we're going to do those two over there. Yeah, and Ricardo as well. Very good. So, dear Father, please bless us at this time. We ask you to embrace us with your love, and you, better than anyone else, better than ourselves, knows what our fears are, what the errors of disharmony are within us, where darkness still finds residence in us. So we ask you to allow at this time for the blessings, for the good energies, and for your love to penetrate us deeply, meeting these areas of need spiritually, mentally, and physically. We are thankful for the blessings. Please help all of us at this time, incarnate and discarnate, doing this work of love. Thank you, and so be it. Let's do our final prayer. Dear Father, thank you very much for this day. Thank you very much for all the teachings and the blessings of this morning. May each one of us leave here today feeling more courageous to overcome our challenges, to overcome life's challenges, with the certainty that each difficulty has a purpose in giving us greater awareness and helping us to evolve in this life. We are very thankful for the blessings. We ask you, Lord, to bless our homes, our family members, our loved ones, friends, anyone who we know at this time to be in distress, to be in darkness, to be in need of courage and hope. We pray for them, and we ask you to bless them with your love and mercifulness. Once more, we are thankful for everything that we received today, for everything that we are. May we be open to your presence as we live here today throughout another week. And may each one of us return here next week, taking with us and keeping within us the peace that we share at this time. Thank you so much, and so be it. All right. It's a little different without the kids. I miss them. I like that moment where everybody comes together. I have a few announcements, and I wrote them down. Go travel when we pay our bills at home, the center's like, oh, it's just my $15. They don't need that. Now we do. So please, we just remind you of your contributions during this month of December is very important. Now, another way to contribute is our party. Our Christmas party is going to be December 10th at my house. We have a little flyer here. There's a little flyer out there. Sherry's going to be out there, so if you want to buy the ticket for the party, it's a dinner party, it's $15. That's also a way of helping us out. So you can do that today. Just let her know that you're paying for that. Another thing that's important is the Spiritus Federation of Florida is going to hold its 7th Spiritus Conference. And just now this week, the registrations for the conference has opened. Last year, it happened in Orlando. We have over 100 people, right? Correct? Who actually did not enter because us Brazilians, we like to believe that in the last minute we can get the ticket. It's not the case for this conference. It just doesn't happen like this. It's sold out every year, and then people say, you guys are so mean, you won't let us in. There was no seats. And so we, another thing is it's one price until the very end of December, and then it goes up a little bit for January. So if you want to buy at the cheapest price, you have until December 31st. It's an excellent gift for Christmas to give to someone. So take that into consideration, and you have to go to the website. There's one here. I think there's another flyer out there that you can just take a picture, taking on your phone, so you know where to go to register. couple more things. One thing is we are in need of volunteers to help with cleaning the center. Right now, we have one person who every week comes here and cleans the center. It's a very, if we would have 4 people that would volunteer, that means that each person would help once a month. Sometimes people are a little tight in money, but you know, we need all kinds of contributions. Money is not the only one. And so we certainly appreciate coming and finding the center clean and nice. But there's actually people who work hard to keep it that way. So if you feel like you can help us out with one weekend, one day that you could come, just let me know. And last but not least, we have new courses starting next year, and I would like to bring that up to your attention. For the English-speaking group, or for the Brazilians who like to study in English, we have on Wednesdays, starting January 11th, which is going to be the first week that the center is open, the Spirits Book course. It's a brand new course on the Spirits Book. It's going to be led by our friend Carlos, right there, and myself, and Andrea. We will be working together. It's Wednesday, 7:30 to 8:30, okay? If you have already studied the Spirit's Book and the Gospel, you can also join us twice a month on the study of heaven and hell. But for that, you need to talk to me, because we have a more advanced group here at the center who has been studying for a long time together and who's actually ready to go to this book. But it's also open, and we will consider on a case-to-case basis. It's going to be on the 2nd and 4th week of each month. So if you're doing the Spirit's Book, you cannot do Heaven and Hell, because the Spirit's Book is a weekly course. But, you know, so it starts next year. It's a great opportunity to study. We have, for some people, it's a little harder to come. Tuesdays at 6:30 is a little early for people to leave work and get here. We have this option of Wednesday at 7:30, which is a little later time. Okay? So just consider that, and if you're interested, please let me know as well. Okay? All right, guys, have a wonderful, wonderful Sunday, and I hope to see everybody again next Sunday. Thank you.